Peace and blessings. I am Chi Vital, aka King Chi, and I am back with another tool for your toolkits. Welcome, welcome, family. We are in a new segment, so I want to invite you all to join in for our Trigger Point Tuesdays. This is what I came up with. It's a work in progress. We'll see how it goes. Firstly, I apologize in advance for the background noises and distractions. I'm actually being blessed with a brand new deck in my backyard, totally unplanned, but totally desired. So we know the magic is working. I'm glad to be a good example of such things happening when the universe aligns with those silent callings from the heart. So this summer, I'll have a lot more enjoyment in my backyard. All right. Peace and welcome as you tune in. Please like the video, share the video, and if you're new and you enjoy this content, please subscribe to my channel. It will help my algorithm grow. As you all know, I'm here to offer content that is super, super duper easy to apply to your lives and to bring you more gratification and satisfaction with who you are as you are in wholeness. All right. So let's go. Let's go. What's up, Jeremiah? How you doing? Welcome, welcome. So Tuesdays already, I've decided in the vein of harmony, I'm going to talk about things that push our buttons. To some degree, some form or fashion, it's either going to be something that pushes our buttons physically. So, trigger points is a real thing in body work, and they're very interesting. So, this will be great for those of you who want to get some relief in that area. And the things that trigger us mentally. If you follow psychology, you will note that psychology pretty much in its entirety, no, but for the most part, addresses things that happen to us as children that now as adults we can take care of, and we can address in a way that is more healing. So when you go into the realm of wanting to understand your mind, the things that make you tick, the way that you think, the way you perceive, what hurts you, what brings you joy, understand that the biggest and most important conversation that you're going to be having on a regular basis is with the child, who you are, who the child that still remains with you, and the child from back then. Okay, so that child is there, they do grow, but there are a lot of things that need to be healed from the past. And you're not alone. We've all been there, and we continue to be there until we can really integrate. Okay, so we jump in, before we jump in, I just want to let you all know, take a good look at these eyebrows. For those of you who are new, you may not know this, but if you watch enough of my videos, you might catch me on here without my eyebrows. I found a new product that is pretty fun, and for whatever reason, I was like, let me be silly and fun with you all. But you might be a little light in the eyebrow section, like I am, and I'm totally not a makeup person. But I found this new product. I'm not getting sponsored, but to hell with it, right? Sculpting brow pencil. Professional Kiss New York. This thing makes shaping my eyebrows to shade them in really easy. So for all my tomboys, I guess that's probably a politically incorrect term nowadays. And for those of you who usually wear natural face, if you want something that'll make it a little easier for you, check this out. It's easy to remove too. It doesn't get all sticky. I probably won't ever do a makeup tutorial. I shouldn't shorten myself, but you got this part. Let's have fun with this. Let me be a little girly. A little girly with you all for a second. So you got this I don't know if you can see it, but it's like an edge, like a wedge tip. So it gives you like ease with the little arch there. And then it's like mascara for your eyebrows. So you know how we put on mascara for our eyelashes to make it a little pronounced? I like it because it gets like the little hair follicles. Anyways, that's Mother and makeup. Ta-da! Did y'all like that? Y'all want me to do that? I know y'all like my lipstick colors usually. So next thing, here we go. Hi Kate, hi Jen. Next thing, I want you all to look down in the description box when you finish watching this video. Serious note. Don't forget that there are thousands, millions of people out there in the world that could absolutely benefit from the tools, the lessons, and the services that you all have access to. In order for us to make that available to more of the world, local communities, and worldwide, the Feytree Foundation has been developed. For us to be able to do that, we're going to need your support. So I want you to check out a gala we have coming up June 30th, 2023. It's Friday, June 30th in Baltimore, Maryland. The information is there. And if you can't be there in person, please take advantage of our donation button. You can also find out more about the organization at the website, thefeytree.org. And I can't stress enough how important it is to take care of our artistic and creative community in receiving these life skills and receiving holistic services and just the resources necessary to make sure that their lives continue to be beautiful and enriched as they enrich our lives on a daily basis. All right. You can absolutely share the website any and everywhere. You can share the Eventbrite link any and everywhere. You all might have people out here that can get to the event before you can. So spread the word. It's public. It's a public service. I want everyone and their mama to get involved. Okay? So now, the topic that we're going to be talking about this afternoon: money, magic, and PTSD. Before I continue, I'd like to see some more likes so that I know that you are engaged. Some of you might be experiencing the symptoms of PTSD. If at this point you don't know what that is, it's post-traumatic syndrome disorder. It is, in layman's term or a nutshell, the way that you respond. You might have depression or anxiety that is technically inappropriate at inappropriate times in inappropriate proportions to your environment due to your sensitivity from experiencing trauma of some sort in the past. Okay. I find that it's one of the things that the world of psychology has given its attention to that makes sense. It makes sense because if you experience something that is traumatic meaning like it has a serious effect on your nervous system, you're likely, as the way that we're designed, you're likely to carry on that memory into your adult life, into an occasion out in the future. And again, I apologize for the noise, but it is for a good cause. They're doing construction in the backyard, and maybe I'll have to move my office upstairs for the rest of the videos that are going to be coming. All right. But what I have been really looking at is not just post-traumatic syndrome, but the effects of it when it happens early on in life. So it comes from your childhood. today's subject of money, magic, and PTSD, I want to just talk about the types of things that create traumatic experiences and how it affects money, how it affects the magic, and see if some of you can relate to some of those circumstances or even reactions or symptoms of what you have experienced in this life. Okay, so as an adult, you may have experienced traumatic events around money, like facing eviction, having your lights cut off, realizing that cup of noodles has become your full meal for the evening, and sometimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. These are moments where you have realized that whatever it is that you're doing financially is not enough. And it's one thing as a child to experience the not enough, and it's on the onus of the adults that are supposed to be taking care of you. But what happens is that in experiencing that as a child, when you experience it as an adult, if you hadn't addressed those experiences, you have this moment of having a childhood or an adolescent response to a very adult matter. There can be a disconnect where you can freeze or faint, right? Or totally like detach and run away from the scenario. And in this community, where not just this community, but the conscious community or the community of the new agers that believe in magic is concerned, money magic is a major point of interest. It's not just a point of interest for those individuals who have a level of stability and they want to expand it, or they have certain deals on the table and they want to make sure that they have all their ducks in a row, spiritually, physically, spiritually and physically, right? It is one of those selling points in the community of spirituality, because there are also a lot of people who don't fully understand the energetics behind why money exists, why it behaves the way it behaves energetically, but also in a real way. It's in the real way where folks who have experienced a lot of trauma around their money get blocked. And I'll just speak from my own experience, where for a long time, I say a long time because it sticks out when I go to do the shadow work around what is heavy when it comes to money in itself. All right. Because it doesn't just all just immediately, because you decide to think a certain way, get lighter. But I want to take you through some of the things that I have learned along the way that maybe like a light bulb went off. And it wasn't until I had to get back to looking at these numbers, at analyzing growth charts, at looking at what works, what doesn't work from a very quantitative standpoint, that I said, if I'm experiencing this at this level in my life, then I need to ask why. And one of the things I realized whenever I met with people, it wasn't that I didn't have the money. I always have the money. The biggest question was, well, how, right? How and where's it coming from? And I didn't have an answer, because the way that I was looking at is just would appear. It just is strictly magical because I cannot add this and that and say, well, this is how it worked. And while that's fantastic, right? We all have, not everyone can say that. So I definitely say that's such a blessing in my life, right? And in my story. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I think what happens with that, though, is what happens when an individual who is okay, like they can find the money for whatever it is that they need, because it is an energetic, but they don't understand it. They don't understand it, but why? And I know that I often say, but why is such a beautiful way to open up and loosen things that are very sticky, sensitive, hidden within ourselves. But why? But why? Like peeling the layers back. Sometimes we don't understand really the way money comes and goes, ebbs and flows in our lives, because it hurts too much to actually look at it. It hurts too much because it reminds you of either what you've had to do to get it in some instances. It reminds you of how much you fear not having it, because of what you've experienced in the past. And so even when you're in a really good place, there's this trauma response around money. And so even when you go into it ritualistically, you may be wondering, well, I see results from my magic when it comes to money, but for some reason, where I can envision that there's a larger amount that's supposed to come, I'm getting this trickle effect. And if you think about, I don't know what you're familiar with, but I'll give you a little background into the laboring process. When a woman goes into labor and the amniotic sac, right? We have this sac that covers the baby and all the fluid is inside, protecting the baby. When it ruptures, but it just ruptures enough to begin leaking out, the birthing process can actually take way longer because it's not wet enough, right? It's not all the way open. So we know that this baby is coming, but the movement does not allow the fullness of the gift to come forward, as opposed to when that bag like really bursts and then all the signals hit at the same time and the cervix starts to thin out to allow this blessing to come forward. It's like you're sitting there and you're like, I can envision and I can see, I can feel, I'm beginning to feel what I'm bringing forward, but there's like this tight space that is not open enough for the blessing to come through. And why is that? Okay. And I want to get to that. And I'm going to put a note here. Why is that space so small? Okay. So I remember, because this is something that you may have experienced before as well. Sometimes what happens is it takes a hitting the wall moment where you no longer have what you feel is a choice in a matter, that you finally begin to experience what it means to be in surrender, full surrender. Full surrender is hard, okay? Full surrender requires placing the ego all the way to the back and realizing, okay, I need help, and it's either going to be divine or nothing. And so that's a double-edged sword. Again, that comes up a lot within the conscious community, right? It's like, how many adults in this space have that block where they're not really looking at the reality of their money because there's trauma around it. And then they're experiencing the symptoms of being short on the bills because they're overspending or they're not making enough. And they're like, well, I'm going to trust in the divine to provide. And while we want to have that principle of I want to trust in the divine to provide, how conscious is the individual that is them deflecting from the root cause of leaning on the divine? It's not really coming from a space of empowerment. It's coming from, if I could be really harsh, because I really, it's Trigger Tuesday. It's like this puss-ass cowardly look at what the reality is, right? The reality is not, well, I'm in this position so the divine can help me. The reality is that there's trauma around how to get to a certain financial space of security and independence that has led to this fear that blocks in the learning around money, that blocks in the earning around money, because there's so much tied to it. The money sector in itself is tied directly to our survival. Okay, so when we experience that as individuals, rather than moving in a space of throwing things in the air, there is some work to be done around understanding why. Okay? On the flip side, when we get to that space, so I'm magical as I don't know what, I'm super magical. Okay? And I'm really proud to say that. When we get into a space where we really don't know, like, where's this next dollar gonna come from? There's a couple of things that you can do that can help support you emotionally and energetically, while you also address the root cause. So I will say this. There was a time in my life where I experienced all of the things that I told you about. Eviction notice on the door. The lights are not on. What WTF? Like you can't explain. Like if it's daytime, you can get away with it, but by the time it's nighttime, especially if you're a parent, you're like, trying to move around in the dark, and the kids are like, why are the lights off? Like, why are we all lit up with candles? There's so much around that, right? But I remember during that time that a lot of my energy was going into service. And it's not even like a boosting point, because rest assured, most people who are artists, creatives, really in a space of conscious living, and you think you're in a conscious, you're striving towards it, right? We're givers. And so during that time, like most of my time, like most of you, was given to being in nature, giving back to the earth, planting trees, looking after everyone else's children, feeding strange people's strange children, wiping snotty noses on their ways to school, just being like a mama in the community. And feeling like I'm just going to stick with educating myself as much as possible and pushing forward and putting one foot in front of the other. The thing that saved me was that the three things that I mentioned, I didn't mention animals, but I was definitely in that space as well, right? Animals, nature, children, okay? These vessels, or these beings, have the least resistance on earth. They have the least resistance to the abundance of the universe. And so when we align our vibration with those three areas, children, animals, and nature, we absolutely do begin pouring into our vortex of prosperity. And I'm going to call it like the emergency fund, because when you are beginning to address the trauma around building your wealth and why you haven't gotten to it yet, you're going to want to build up your emergency fund of prosperity. And I'll repeat them again: being of service to children, animals, and nature. Okay? Because those three beings are in alignment with the natural flow of abundance, and they have the least resistance because they do not worry. And they have the most trust in the creation of what they are. Okay? And you will see that in your life, if you've poured into those three areas, when and if shit hits the fan, your windfall that comes in to support you is coming from that vortex. So pour into it. All right? With that being said, the other thing to help cushion and create a good store of peace and peaceful vibration around you is to be in gratitude and to hold the visualization of resolving the financial issue. So someone mentioned, I'm going to move into this other piece that's with it. Someone mentioned wanted to talk about magic. Now, I don't think that they mentioned sex magic, but when we talk about money magic, sex and money magic really go hand in hand with each other, all right? Because they are vibrationally in that same space. I want to note that during the time that I mentioned, I experienced all of those things, all of those signs of transition, all of those signs of something has to change or else you're gonna like really not be okay, right? I noticed that there's a difference between joyful sex versus dutiful sex. And one thing that doesn't get mentioned as much is that one of the reasons why women, or men for that matter, receive so many gifts, so much prosperity, so many forms of abundance when they're in a space of joyful sex. Joyful sex meaning it's not attached to a duty. It's not because you and I are in a relationship that sex must occur. It's not because this is my job, but there's a freedom around that energy of when it comes and it flows, it happens, and when it comes and goes, there's no stickiness around it. Okay? And although people tend to think that, men can just go around sexing down whoever they feel like and they don't experience anything, not all men don't have a conscience, and not all men think very little of themselves. Okay? And not all men are totally unconcerned about their health or the possibility of making random ass kids that they're gonna have to take care of. So they too can either be in a space of joyful sex or dutiful sex. And the dutiful sex is where some of you are in relation, right? This is why I'm bringing it up. Some of you are in relationships, or you have a partner or a husband or a wife, and you're looking to do sex magic around your money, and you still not seeing the results that you envision, and you wonder why. And that will be because the sex that you and your mate are experiencing is still tied to trying to bring this money into the household to pay a bill or to buy a new car or maybe to go on another vacation. But it's still heavy. It's still with your mate that you all have developed an aspect of your sexual exchange with one another as another task, another thing that you do because you are in relationship. And so the magic that should exist there when it comes to opening up that canal for the money to come through is restricted because there's the limitation on it within your body and your cells. Your memory now is that I lay with this person every day. I have sex with them. So even when you set up a ritual, you still are having sex with the person you're supposed to have sex with because that's your job. Press one in the chat if that makes sense to you. And for some of you, because you have that trauma still working, okay, you also have the weight of you're trying to address why you don't have enough and how you need to get more. But you also want to have this experience of sexual exchange with your mate that is satisfying because part of you wants to grow financially so that this thing doesn't fall apart. Because no money, no honey. So you're trying to increase the honey, but still coming from a place where there's some trauma present. And that's why, studying holistic healing techniques behind sex when you're not trying to get anything, you're just wanting to loosen up the body, you're wanting to turn on the circuits, you're wanting to unlock the portal is important. Studying that is absolutely important because if you can do more healing throughout your relationship where it becomes second nature in an open and fluid way, right? When you get into ritual now, you're no longer working with each other with these locked portals or these blocked cells. You're working with each other in a space where you are really open. Although a ritual space has been set, you don't now feel like you're on a stage with a camera and which is like the gods are watching. No, like everything is coming from within and you become symbiotic. You really become symbiotic to the whole space. The whole thing is more of a matter of joy and freedom of expression. Okay? So here's the thing. We talk about when we get to that place of like, oh shit, like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen around this money because you like been ignoring it, closing your eyes and like, if I can't see it, it can't see me. Okay. But the bills come anyway. And although you can tear them in half, they're still coming. Okay. There has to be some kind of like grasping this thing and experiencing the tug with it. Not just a matter of like being dragged, but like holding it enough to feel the resistance so that when it the tension gets cut, you have enough momentum where things open and fall on you. All right. And so we see that people who go from rags to riches, it's not just like, okay, so I was in rags and I just slept in my car for 5 months and then things just worked out for me. a lot of times when people experience that transition, that 5 months of sleeping in the car or on the beach, things come up. There's a lot of isolation and alone time where the person is actually in tug of war with all those pieces that have put them in that position, right? It's easier not to go to tug of war when you still have some cushion and you're like in your spot, but you're not getting kicked out, or you're, living with mom or dad. And so, you're a little comfortable. But when you get to that place where you're no longer comfortable, like you really do have to face the music, you hold that thing and you experience the tension of it. And that's an important part in your healing process, because one thing about those who have PTSD, they can either snap and like overreact, right? And become combative and aggressive, or they can cower and just like isolate and push all things out. But if you can get into a space where now you're grappling with something, you get to really understand how heavy is it really. And once you know how heavy something is, it's like you know how to bear down your own weight, which is the meaning behind holding your own weight, right? If you can hold your own weight, then you know what muscles need to be developed so that you can continue to move forward. And as you develop that, that's when the tension gets cut and the way is open. The way is all the way open. But you want to address the fears and the self-worth behind those traumas, because if you don't, no matter what you do magically, you still are not addressing the part of you, that child inside of you, that it's not that you don't believe. It's not always that you don't believe, because children or that child inside of you, they do have this they have a fantastic imagination. They have the imagination. It's actually the adult part of you that doesn't believe. The child believes. The child is the one that experienced the disappointment in your lack of belief in it. Okay? And you only have the lack of belief in it because you haven't addressed what was snatched away from you, as far as, what you're capable of achieving, what resources you do have now, what skills you do have now. I mean, you look at folks who have gone to school for years and years and years, degrees on top of degrees, and they shy away from opportunities because they have trauma. They have the trauma that keeps them in a space of kind of wanting someone else to do it, because that child is still looking for someone to do it. Like, I can do it, but you don't realize you can do it. You can do it. And you probably have done it a couple of times, but you only have done it a couple of times before because you had to. And then we move more into the duty of doing as opposed to that joyful flowing. Make sense? So, I mean, the exercise is not really a homework video, right? But if some of this is ringing true right now, is triggering you, and I love to trigger you more. I do. Try to look at what you are bringing in. Try to look at what you are giving out, and ask yourself, either why haven't you asked for a raise, or ask yourself, why you have not applied for another job, or ask yourself why you quit before you had your other thing in your hand. Um, and if you answer any of those things where you're like, well, I just trust the universe, I want you to have that as a red flag, because you either are trusting the universe or you're having a puss ass moment where you didn't think that you would be able to help yourself. And that is a big deal to realize that, because we want to trust the universe to respond to our vibration. And if your vibration is still in acting small, then you still gonna get small. Because I want you to act big and really feel big, and then ask the universe to match that. It's like, match me here, and go a little bigger, go a little deeper, and then tell the universe, match me here. Okay? So I'm gonna go to the chat, because I love to see when you all have questions, or even just comments, right? Let me see. That's me. I'm a chronic. Hey, Davy Tayo Moyo. That's me. I'm a chronic opportunity shyer. It took me 20 years to even start putting faith in my art, let alone accept collab offers. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Sometimes the trauma response, collab offers tend to bring up the fear of being compared, fear of comparison, and loss of control. Because when we're working with other people, then we don't have as much control. And when we don't have control, we tend to get hurt from our trauma mind. But if we're feeling like we're going to get had, or we're going to get hurt, we have to move out of the space of, okay, I'll just trust the divine to protect me. But like, look at it from a real place as well as business. So how do I protect myself legally? And how do I protect myself magically? And that's why I like to get into the holistic approach of things, because mental health plays a huge part in this. Mental health is not just my mind is broken. Mental health and addressing these issues is more so about how to support the way that we think, both right and left brained, so that we have a balanced brain and a more balanced experience in the way that we want to experience it. You see what I'm saying? There are times where collaborating with others is the only way we are going to experience the vision that we have for ourselves, because we can go much further if we're working with others. And then we have to have the experience of working with others to know what works, what doesn't work in real time, as opposed to already having these self-limiting beliefs that somehow things are not going to work out. Okay? Or you're not good enough, or it's going to take shine, it's going to take some light away from who you are and what you are. Okay? So I really encourage you all to expand in all of your expressions. And this brings me back to the Feytree Foundation, where creatives need to be around more creatives, and not just other people who are artistically inclined, but our healing artists, our writers, our painters, our musicians, our beaters, our jewelers, our home decor people, all of those individuals, but who are also being supported by other practitioners who are playing the role of practitioner for the creatives, so that you can have healthier collaborations and more beautiful things can come out of that. Okay, our rainbow warriors. In the tradition of Mama Fabian, who is my mother and the namesake, right? It's angel warriors. Angel warriors. We got our wings. I think I wrote something down here too. Man, oh, it must have been in a free writing piece. But you get our wings, okay, and our bows and arrows. And no, we're not talking about Cupid. We also got our swords, and we go to town when we need to. So before I go, make sure that you all check out the website, okay, thefeytree.org. All the information is there about the gala coming up Friday, June 30th in Baltimore, Maryland. For those of you watching this video, no matter where you are, would love to meet you in person. And if you can't make it, you can set up your regular donations, and you can let us know on our RSVP form how you want to get involved, because there's so many different areas where you can get involved. Yeah, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments below. And if this enriched your life, you found some value in it, please do share this video. And again, subscribe to my channel. I'm Chi Vital, aka King Chi, the fairy love mother. And it's always a pleasure to be here with you all. Peace, love, and Bliss family. We'll catch up soon. I'll see you for Wisdom Wednesdays.